Ladies and gentlemen, my friends, brother and sister, there is a mystery hidden in the night, a moment when the world sleeps but heaven speaks. It is the hour when the veil between time and eternity is thinnest. 3 a.m. Not by chance, not by habit, but by divine design. For God does not speak according to man's schedule. He speaks according to Kairos, the appointed time. And there is something about this hour, something that echoes throughout the ages. 3 a.m., the time of visitation, in the stillness of night, when all distractions are silenced, God moves. The prophets called it the hour of the watchman, when visions come, when heaven interrupts earth. It is the hour when Jacob wrestled with the angel. The hour when Samuel heard his name in the temple, Shmuel, Shmuel. Something is coming. And God said it would happen at 3 a.m. Not just a time on the clock, but a prophetic sign, a symbol, a mystery. It's the hour of unveiling, of testing, of decision, the hour when darkness is deepest, right before the rising of the light. Look through the scriptures. What happens in the night? It was at midnight that the cry rang out. Behold, the bridegroom come. But it was at 3 a.m. when the oil in the lamps would be found full or empty. It was in the third watch of the night that Yeshua came walking on the water. The storm raging, the disciples fearing. But in that moment, the impossible walked into the possible. He comes in the storm, in the dark, at 3 a.m. My friend, there are moments in history appointed by God that arrive like the stillness of that hour. Nations tremble. Foundations shake. What was hidden is revealed, and the Lord says that which was done in secret will be shouted from the rooftops. What was buried will rise. What was delayed will break forth. At 3 a.m., not just in time, but in spirit. There's a 3 a.m. moment coming to the world, to the nations, to you. A shaking, a calling, a moment of awakening. You may find yourself in your own 3 a.m. season, a time of silence, of questions, of waiting. But don't fear the silence. Don't curse the darkness. Because that's the hour when God speaks. That's the hour when God moves. What did God say would happen at 3 a.m.? He says the chains would break. He said the gate would open. He said the voice would speak. He said the remnant would rise. He said you would wake up, fall on your knees, lift your hands, and say, "Here I am, Lord, speak." Because 3 a.m. is not the end of the night, it's the beginning of the morning. Prepare yourself. Be ready. The alarm of heaven is sounding. God said it would happen. At 3 a.m., 3 a.m. is more than just a point on the clock. In the realm of the Spirit, it is a moment charged with divine mystery. Throughout the ages, God has never been limited by human time, yet He chooses specific moments to reveal His purposes. And there is something about 3 a.m., that silent, deep hour of the night, that heaven has marked. In biblical times, the night was divided into 4 watches. The third watch, spanning from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m., and the fourth watch, from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., were known as the darkest parts of the night. Yet it is also within this span, especially as the third gives way to the fourth, that God most often moves in sudden and supernatural ways. This hour is the transition, the point where darkness reaches its peak, just before the dawn begins to break. In the natural, 3 a.m. is when most of the world is asleep. The noise is gone. The distractions have faded. The cities are silent. The atmosphere is still. It is in this sacred stillness that the voice of God is most clearly heard by those who are awake, whether physically or spiritually. In Scripture, God often chose the night hours to move, to speak, to act. It was in the night that Jacob wrestled with the angel. It was in the night that the Lord called to young Samuel, not once, but 3 times. It was in the night that Paul and Silas worshiped in a prison cell. And the earth shook, not at noon, but at midnight and beyond. And it was in the early morning hours that the women found the tomb empty. He had risen before the sun. There is a pattern, a holy mystery. 3 a.m. represents a divine appointment. It is the hour of transition, of separation, of decision. For someone, it is the hour of warfare, when the forces of darkness are most active and the soul is most tested. But for the people of God, it is also the hour of divine whispering, sudden awakenings, angelic visitations, and unexpected answers. Many have testified to being stirred from sleep at exactly 3 a.m. night after night, feeling a pull in their spirit, a call to pray, to seek, to listen. This is not coincidence. It is calling. In the Hebrew mindset, a new day begins at sundown, not at sunrise. So by the time 3 a.m. arrives, we are already in the deep stages of the new day, though the light has not yet broken through. Spiritually, this is profound. It means that before the evidence of morning, the day has already begun. Before the promise is seen, it is already on the way. 3 a.m. becomes a prophetic picture of walking by faith and not by sight. It is the moment of believing when nothing looks different, the hour of trusting before the light breaks forth. God often speaks when no one else is speaking. He moves when no one expects, and when the world is asleep, He awakens those who are listening. 3 a.m. is not just a moment. It is a message. It declares that God is not bound by man's time. He is the author of divine timing. He acts suddenly and He acts silently. When He says something will happen at 3 a.m., it will not come with fanfare, but it will come with fire. It will not announce itself to the crowd, but it will shake the one who is watching. The question is not whether God will move at 3 a.m. The question is whether we will be awake to witness it. Throughout Scripture and throughout history, there have been moments when the veil between heaven and earth seems thinner. Moments when God chooses to reveal Himself in ways that are unmistakable. And often these moments come not in the brightness of day, but in the silence and stillness of night. The hour of 3 a.m. falls into what was known in ancient times as the fourth watch of the night, a time the Bible often associates with divine activity. It is the hour of visitation and revelation. Not just a time when God is near, but a time when He speaks, when He shows, when He calls. The prophets of old understood the weight of night watch. In the Psalms, David speaks of rising before the dawn to seek the Lord. He writes of meditating on the statutes of God in the night hours, when all is quiet and the soul can truly listen. This is not accidental. There is a reason God chose to visit people like Samuel while he slept in the temple. There is a reason visions came to Daniel, Ezekiel, and John in the stillness of night. When all earthly voices are quieted, the voice of God can be heard more clearly. Revelation by its nature is not loud. It is holy. It does not compete with the chaos of the day. It waits for the stillness of the night, the fourth watch of the night. The disciples were straining at the oars, the wind against them, the sea raging. And it was in that watch that Jesus came to them, walking on the water, defying the laws of nature, stepping across the storm. This was not by chance. God chose that hour. He didn't come in the light when they could see clearly. He came in the dark. When their faith was tested, when fear was near, when their strength was fading, that's when He revealed Himself. That's when revelation happened, not in theory, but in power. They saw Him not only as the teacher, but as the one who commands the wind and waves. There is something about the 3 a.m. hour that demands faith. It is the space between what was and what is to come. It's not yet dawn, but it's no longer night. It is the in-between, the liminal space where revelation is born. It's where the veil lifts, even if only for a moment, and heaven whispers into the soul of man. This is the hour when God calls His prophets, when He gives dreams and visions, when He releases burdens and mandates, the hour of divine secrets, the hour of holy instructions. But this revelation is not for the casual. It is for the one who watches, the one who waits, the one who listens, as the priests of old kept watch through the night. So now there are those God awakens to stand on the wall, to be watchmen, to hear the word of the Lord and to speak it. Revelation is not random. It is given to those who are ready to receive. And often that readiness comes in the stillness of 3 a.m. This is the hour when destinies are whispered, when warnings are released, when assignments are given. God is always speaking, but there are moments when He speaks in ways that mark a life forever. And often those moments come at 3 a.m. Not because of the number, but because of what it represents. Solitude, silence, surrender. When the soul is emptied of noise, it is finally able to be filled with the divine. The world may sleep, but heaven is awake. The city may be silent, but the throne room is not. At 3 a.m. the door opens, and those who are watching may enter. Those who are listening may hear. Those who are seeking may find. For it is the hour of visitation and revelation. The hour when God reveals what he has hidden from the proud and gives it to the humble, the hungry, and the watching. The darkness of 3 a.m. can feel overwhelming. It is the moment when night is at its deepest, when the silence is thick, and when the weight of unanswered questions seems the heaviest. But this is not the absence of God. It is often the moment before his voice comes. All throughout Scripture, there is a divine pattern. God speaks in the darkness. When man has no more words, when the crowd is gone and the noise has faded, the still, small voice of heaven breaks through. We are taught to fear the dark, to dread the silence, to associate absence with abandonment. But in the eyes of heaven, darkness is not the enemy. In fact, the first words ever recorded from the mouth of God were spoken into complete darkness. In Genesis, the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. Yet into that darkness, God spoke. Let there be light. The light did not come before his word. It came because of his word. And it is the same in our lives. God does not wait for our situations to brighten before he speaks. He speaks into the darkness, and it is his word that brings the dawn. 3 a.m. is the perfect picture of this. It is the hour when the world is asleep, when everything seems still and dead, yet it is also the hour when God speaks most clearly to those who are awake, not just physically but spiritually. When we go through a season that feels like 3 a.m., it may seem like nothing is happening, no answers, no movement, just waiting. But that is often when heaven is most active. The silence is not absence, it is preparation. The darkness is not death, it is the womb of the new job. In all his suffering, cried out in the night, wondering where God... But it was in that place of darkness that God answered him, not through people, not through logic, but through a whirlwind. In that place of brokenness and mystery, God revealed more of himself than Job had ever known. The same is true for Elijah, who found himself in a cave, broken and disillusioned. He looked for God in the earthquake and the fire, but God came instead in a still, small voice, a whisper in the dark. The darkness, the silence, the stillness, all of it trains the soul to listen. It removes the distractions. It forces us to pay attention, to tune our ears, not to the noise of the world, but to the heartbeat of heaven. And when you're in a 3 a.m. moment in life, emotionally, spiritually, the enemy will tell you that God is gone, that he has stopped speaking, that the silence means abandonment. But that is a lie. The truth is, God often waits for silence before he speaks. He doesn't waste his voice on chaos. He waits until we are quiet enough to truly hear him. Think of the prophets. Think of the intercessors. Think of those God used mightily. Many of them were awakened in the middle of the night. Why? Because there is something about the 3 a.m. hour that invites the presence of God. It is a moment of surrender when your strength is gone and all that remains is dependence. It is in that moment that God speaks with clarity, depth, and purpose. So, do not despise the darkness. Do not fear the silence. If you find yourself in a 3 a.m. season, you are in the company of prophets and kings. You are in the place where God moves quietly but powerfully. He is not absent, he is near. He is not silent. He is. He is preparing to speak. Because the God who said, "Let there be light," has never stopped speaking, and he is about to speak into your night. There is a profound lesson that comes from understanding that God's movements often occur in the midst of storms. The 3 a.m. hour, particularly in the context of a crisis or a difficult season, serves as a powerful reminder that God does not shy away from the chaos of life. Instead, It is often in the midst of turmoil, fear, and uncertainty that he reveals his presence most dramatically. The storm is not the absence of God, but often the very means by which he makes his power known. In the gospel, when the disciples were crossing the Sea of Galilee, they encountered a fierce storm. The winds were howling, the waves were crashing, and their boat was being tossed around by the force of nature. They were terrified, struggling with all their might to keep the boat afloat. They thought they were going to drown. Yet it was in that exact moment of despair, when their strength was failing, that Jesus approached them walking on the water. He didn't wait for the storm to pass. He didn't come after the danger had subsided. He came in the storm. He came walking on the waves, not outside of the storm, but through it. The disciples' fear was palpable. Their human instincts told them that the storm was bigger than anything they could handle. And their eyes saw only the waves. But Jesus did not arrive when the sky cleared. He came to them in the midst of their storm. In fact, he used the storm to demonstrate his power over nature and his authority over all that causes fear. When the disciples saw him, they didn't recognize him immediately. They thought he was a ghost. But Jesus reassured them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." This moment is significant because it teaches us that God's movement is not bound by our circumstances. We often pray for God to calm the storm, to take away the danger, to eliminate the struggle. But God's way is often different. He does not simply take us out of the storm. He comes into the storm with us. It is in the midst of the storm that he shows us his sufficiency. He doesn't wait for us to be comfortable or in control. He reveals his presence when we are at our breaking point, when the waters are raging and our strength is nearly spent. In the same way, many of us experience moments of intense fear and uncertainty in our lives, moments that feel like spiritual storms. These could be personal struggles, relational issues, or larger challenges that seem insurmountable. At times, these situations can feel like they are overwhelming us. We feel as though we are sinking, unable to keep our heads above water. But it is precisely in those moments that God shows up. He does not wait for us to have everything under control. He steps into our chaos, offering his peace in the midst of the storm. In the story, after Jesus identified himself, he called Peter to come to him on the water. Peter, full of faith in that moment, stepped out of the boat and began to walk toward Jesus. But as he saw the wind and the waves, fear gripped him and he began to sink. Jesus immediately reached out his hand to catch him, saying, "You of little faith, what? Did you doubt?" This part of the story underscores an important truth. Even when we are walking toward God in faith, the storms of life can still cause us to falter. However, Jesus' hand is always there, reaching out to us when we begin to sink, offering his support and his strength. The storm that initially seemed like a barrier to the disciples' journey actually became the means through which their faith was deepened. The storm revealed their dependence on God and reminded them that he was greater than anything they could face. In the same way, the storms of our lives can serve as opportunities for us to grow in faith. When God moves in the storm, he doesn't just calm the waves. He shapes our character, refines our trust, and deepens our relationship with him. The storm becomes a testing ground for our faith, where we learn to trust God, not just for what he can do for us, but for who he is. When we find ourselves in our own personal storms, at our own 3 a.m. moments, we can take comfort in knowing that God is right there with us. We are never alone in our struggles. He comes to us in the storm, walking on the waves, offering his peace and his presence. The storm is not the end of our journey. It is the means by which God reveals his glory, his power, and his love for us. In the midst of it all, he calls us to keep our eyes on him, knowing that he is greater than any storm we may face. In times of silence and waiting, there is a divine purpose unfolding, even if we cannot see it immediately. The 3 a.m. hour, with its deep quiet, often feels like a moment of delay, a season of spiritual dormancy. Yet in reality, it is a time of preparation. God uses these seasons of waiting to cultivate something in us, to stir up the deep places of our souls, to refine our hearts, and to awaken the calling that lies dormant within. It is often in these quiet, dark moments that God begins to awaken his remnant, those who are called to rise in the fullness of their destiny. The remnant's not necessarily the many, but the few. It is a group of people set apart, had come to a standstill, that his dreams had been shattered. But God was preparing him for something greater, the moment when he would rise to power and save nations. Joseph's time in prison wasn't wasted. It was a time of refining, a time when his character was being shaped to bear the weight of the calling that was on his life. Similarly, the 3 a.m. hour, or the time of waiting in our own lives, is a season of shaping. The quietness of the night, the stillness of the waiting period, allows God to move in ways that would not be possible in the rush and noise of daily life. The remnant is not forged in the easy times. It is formed in the moments when everything is still, when the world is silent, and when we are left to wrestle with our own thoughts and fears. It is in these moments of solitude and stillness that God does his deepest work. In many cases, the remnant is called to stand in the gap for others, to be intercessors, to be watchmen, to be voices crying out in the wilderness. They are the ones who hear the whispers of God when the world is asleep. They are the ones who feel the stirring in their hearts, a deep calling to something greater, even when no one else sees it. Like Esther, who was hidden away in the king's palace for a time, the remnant is often called into a time of preparation before they are revealed. They are placed in positions of obscurity sometimes with little understanding of why, but in God's perfect timing, they will step into the moment for which they were born. These seasons of preparation, though difficult, are essential. They are not about inactivity, but about deepening our relationship with God, increasing our trust in him, and learning to hear his voice clearly. It is during these times that God teaches us to rely on him and not on our own strength. It is in the stillness that he prepares us to rise in strength and courage when the time comes. Just as God called Samuel in the night, he is calling his remnant today. But the question is whether we are listening. Are we awake in the quiet of 3 a.m., ready to respond to his call? Are we willing to step into the unknown, to rise in the moment when the world is unaware? The remnant is often unseen, unnoticed, and even misunderstood. But they are the ones who carry the weight of God's plans for the future. They are the ones who will rise in power when the time is right. Not because of their own strength, but because they have been shaped and refined in the quiet, in the waiting, and in the moments of solitude. God is calling his remnant today, but we must be willing to wait, to listen, and to trust him through the seasons of silence. And in the 3 a.m. moments, he is awakening something deep within us. The courage to rise, the strength to stand, and the faith to step into the fullness of what he has called us to be. The remnant is not only rising, but they are rising with purpose, with clarity, and with a power that has been forged in the fire of preparation. The 3 a.m. hour is often a time of deep darkness, a time when the world is still and quiet, and it can feel like the end of the day or the final stretch of a long night. Yet it is also a moment of great hope, because it is the turning point, the transition from night to day, from darkness to light. Just as in the natural world, the night reaches its deepest point just before the first light of dawn breaks through. Spiritually, the darkest moments are often the prelude to our greatest breakthroughs. The 3 a.m. hour is not just a time of waiting, it is the gateway to the morning, the moment where all the struggles, the waiting, and the silence give way to the new day that God is bringing. In many ways, the 3 a.m. hour is a metaphor for the seasons in our lives when we feel the most weary, the most unsure, and the most spiritually drained. It is the time when it seems like nothing is changing, when the promises of God feel distant, when the breakthroughs we have been praying for have yet to manifest. But it is also the moment when God is doing his most important work, even if we can't see it. Just as a seed must push through the darkness of the soil before it can sprout into the light, so too must we endure the dark moments in order to experience the new things God is about to bring into our lives. This is why the 3 a.m. hour is not just about enduring darkness, it is about anticipating the dawn. It is about recognizing that even when we cannot see the light, the morning is already on its way. We can be assured that the darkest moments of our lives are never without purpose, and they are never the end. In fact, they often mark the very beginning of something new that God is preparing for us. The Bible assures us in Psalm 35 that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. The night is not the end of the story. It is the preparation for the joy that comes with the dawn. This is also reflected in the life of Jesus. He experienced his own dark hour, a time of intense agony and suffering in the Garden of Gethsemane, followed by his crucifixion and death. But that moment of darkness was not the end. It was the necessary precursor to the resurrection. Early on the third day, at the break of dawn, the stone was rolled away and Jesus rose from the dead, victorious over sin and death. The victory of the resurrection came out of the darkness of the tomb. The morning did not come until the darkest hour had passed. Just as Jesus went through his dark hour before he experienced the glory of the resurrection, so too do we go through our dark moments before we can see the light of our own breakthroughs. The 3 a.m. hour is when we are tested, when our faith is stretched, and when we feel like we are at our lowest point. But it is also the moment when God is setting the stage for something glorious. He is preparing us to rise and shine, just as the morning light breaks through the night sky. In the same way, when we find ourselves in the middle of a season of waiting or uncertainty, it is important to hold on to the truth that the morning is coming. Our struggles and our waiting are not in vain. There is purpose in the silence and darkness. God is at work even when we cannot see it. The breakthroughs we have been waiting for are not far off. They are just on the horizon. And in that moment when the morning breaks, when the new day arrives, we will see the fruit of our endurance and our faith. The 3 a.m. hour is a sacred time, a time when we are on the cusp of something great. It is the turning point, the moment of transition, when we move from one season to another. Just as the night surrenders to the day, so too will our dark moments give way to the bright new things that God has in store for us. It is a reminder that no matter how dark things may seem, no matter how heavy the night feels, the dawn is coming, and when it comes, it will bring with it light, clarity, hope, and a new beginning. The 3 a.m. hour is not the end. It is only the beginning of what God is about to do in our lives. And so, my friend, remember this. When the clock strikes 3 a.m. and all around you is silent and the night feels endless, God is not absent. He is moving. He is closer than your next breath. The storm you face, the silence you endure, the waiting that weighs heavy on your soul, it is not in vain. It is the divine hour, the sacred moment when the heavens are preparing to break open, when the unseen hand of God is setting everything in motion. You are not forgotten. You are being refined. You are being positioned for the dawn that is already on its way. The breakthrough you seek, the answer you cry out for, is closer than you know. So do not give up in the dark, because the darkest hour comes just before the greatest light. God said it would happen, and if He spoke it, it will surely come to pass. Stand firm. Hold your faith. Keep your eyes on Him, because the morning is about to break, and with it, the fulfillment of the promise. It is coming. It is happening. It is already on the way.